Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera, and you are watching Agenda Awani. Tonight I'm very glad because sports is a very, very important matter in this country. We might be hungry, we might be thirsty, but we are willing to stay for 2 hours over just to cheer on our hope to win things for the country. But it's not just about winning, it's also giving our best, and we can accept if we fail sometimes. But overall, where is our thinking about our sport right now? Is it enough just to look at it as just sports? What about the modern day 21st century approach? It's an industry, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry around the world. So when we talk about football or even the lesser known sport like that we haven't even heard of, I remember when I was discussing with the chief of mission from China, who was bidding for the Winter Olympic 2022 recently in KL, there were even sports that we didn't know of. But let's take a broader view this time of sports in this country, and who better than the best leadership available for me to sit down and really thrash this out rather than Tunku Tan Sri Imran Tunku Jaafar, the president of Majlis Olympic Malaysia. Tunku, it's been a long time since I last saw you talk about sports, but overall, generally, before I go to the juicy stuff of how you started out, squash and everything else, can you give an overview of where our Malaysian sport is right now? I know that's a bit generic, but I'm sure despite the average thinking out there are pockets where we are so far in front. But the question is to bring the rest to be on par with it.
Yeah, I think you've actually described it very well already. In fact, that is one of the big issues in sport today. We have many world champions or near world-class players in many sports, and yet are there going to be anyone behind? Nicol David, who is the real successor to Nicol David? So I think two things. One is important for the individual sports associations and individual sports to really grow their base, ensure that their sport is popular, is played widely amongst the youngsters, and therefore probably at school or even at clubs. They must then have a good junior program to find the really good elite and talented ones. Yes. To then come through the system and have a very, very good pathway towards excellence. Yes. So that is, probably the biggest challenge facing Malaysian sport.
Tunku, I'm so thankful for being where I am, because in the media we've got to look at things sometimes behind the scene. I remember my previous organization sent me to Ghana, but that was the first time we saw Samuel Eto'o, but he was not known yet at the time. Their municipal field didn't even have grass on it, and there's hardly a goalpost. It was a makeshift goalpost, but they can go on and become world icons in that. So I guess maybe it's also a matter of leadership. If somebody didn't pick him up and bring him into the system that pushes him up and be at the best of the world. So when you look at leadership of the sports, yes, we want more and more grassroots to come into the picture, but sometimes people just want to look at the national team, like football. Who looks at the 5 to 7, 9 to 11, for example? Tunku, I guess this is where we need your experience, because if you go back when you started in squash, you can understand the feeling of trying to make it at the lower levels.
Well, I started squash when I was at school. Yes. At boarding school, and it was really a minor sport, second sport. We all had to play a major sport, rugby or cricket or hockey, and squash was regarded as a minor sport, as was tennis, and therefore was a voluntary. Okay. So not everyone played squash. So, but I liked squash. I enjoyed it. In the winter, it's a really good sport. In fact, I used to play after a game of rugby. I used to get onto the squash court and play. And I was so passionate in school with sport that I remember one day I played a game of rugby, went on to the squash court, played the squash, went back to the house, changed, did my prep, and played an inter-house basketball game. Three games.
Where do you get the stamina to do all
Well, in those days, of course, as a 15, 16-year-old, you really did have the stamina. And I think at the end of the day, you really have to enjoy sport.
Yes.
I think one of the things that is not happening, I think, in a lot of junior programs, is that the coaches are not making it, fun. Yeah, exactly. Because once it's fun, I think the kids will keep coming back and wanting, to do the training and etc. But to me, the nub of the problem is the fact that on a Saturday or a Sunday we can drive around KL and see the school fields empty.
Agreed.
And to me, that's very sad.
Yes.
That most of the principals will not allow their schools to be used, at weekends, and it could be their own students.
This is when I want to break it once and for all with you, because a lot of principals or even parents say, if I have to choose in between excelling in sports for my son or daughter and getting all A's, I will choose all A's. But you have shown that you can excel both in the corporate field or in leadership and management and in sports. What's your take on that?
Well, it's there's many of us. There's Tan Sri Jaga, and Nicole is the classic example. I think it's a question of the balance. If you're sensible about it, you spend enough time at both academic and sports, you can make it, and you can't do academic all the time.
Okay.
Because you're gonna wear yourself out. Your brain is gonna wear yourself out.
Tunku, we have to go for a break. This is like football, you go for a match and break. But once we are back, I heard from my colleagues in Arena, and thank God we have Astro Arena now. We have direct information from inside sport itself. When they go overseas, when other journalists or officials ask them, "You're from Malaysia?" "Oh, we are Tunku Imran." So, how do we bring all this good rapport that we have with the rest to link it all the way to our grassroots? I believe if I sit in your chair, when I look at all the NSAs or National Sport Associations, I think that's where the make or break is. But how do we make all of their leaders to be like you, not just looking here, but linking it right there to the Commonwealth or the Olympics game? I mean, every National Sport Association leader should use you as a role model and be there wherever it is, Beijing, Atlanta, Sydney, and be able to rub shoulders with the best so that they get new idea, innovations and creativity for their grassroots. That we'll discuss after the short break. Still glad to be here. It's not easy to sit with Tunku Tan Sri Imran, but he's here in the studio. I'm very, very honored, and we're talking about sports. I put two of my daughters since the age of 5 and 6 into the Rhythmic Excellence Talent Program. But after 10 years, I know it's not easy. So I believe leadership at the National Sport Association level. Of course, we want clubs and everything too, but I guess right now, the NSAs are still one of our main hope to get things right, to lay the ground and framework at the grassroots level. Tunku, like I said before, if you're so popular everywhere, journalists in Malaysia go to in international sports, how do we make other leaders of NSAs or National Sports Associations, takraw, gymnastic, or whatever it is, to be just like you?
Well, I think the first thing is, I know one would like to see the leaders of the national associations actually to have played that sport, originally, because then they know about the sport.
They are immersed with it.
They are immersed, and I think it's very important, even when you're perhaps even if you're not a president, but you maybe just a council member, to still try and get to the international meetings. Those are so important. Yes. And I don't think we have enough Malaysians in the international boards, international councils, and I think that really is where things happen.
When you discuss this at MOM level, what are the thinking to help? Maybe give an injection to the NSAs.
Well, we'd like the MSN, National Sports Council, actually do have a budget for people to go to international annual general meetings and general assemblies. So there is a budget for them there. We can, if they want any assistance there, to go, we'll certainly assist them. But I think they could, in most cases, the International Federation is actually paying for them to come. That's one. And I think when you're there, you must open your mouth. You must talk to other people. You just don't just
lobby, move around.
Well, it's not so much lobby. It's just meeting the people, telling them what you're trying to do in your country, and listen to what they do in their country. Speak to the international federations, and they will help you if they knew you needed help. They have a lot of funds. The international federations, for instance, we're trying to put skating and ice hockey into the SEA Games in 2017. The two presidents of ice hockey and skating were here during the recent IOC session, and they met our people. They wanted to try and help as much as they can because they want to try and promote their sport. The canoeing president, who's another IOC member, and also came to me and said, "Look, can I have a meeting with you and the Asian because we want canoe into the SEA Games. Canoeing is not into the SEA Games yet." And he said, "We will put whatever facilities, and whatever training you want, to try and raise your standards so you can win a medal at the SEA Games." It's wonderful.
Is the fight for inclusion of squash, for example, at the very highest level of the Olympics? And I've been retweeting Datuk Nichols' David tweet every time on the matter. And it's such a shame. We want to see her fighting at that level. But that is a strategic move. And she knows that it might not be during her time. But this is laying down the ground, for example. So is that one of the examples to look at?
Yes. She's putting something back into the sport. To me, she's not selfish. She is doing it for the sport. And I've done, I led the first two, campaigns for squash to get into the Olympics. I laid the ground, laid down the base when when I first became the international president or the world president for squash. I said, guys, why are we not in the Olympics? And none of my predecessors had even thought about being in the Olympics. And essentially, squash missed the boat. We almost got in 2005 when we and karate were voted in, but we didn't get the required 2/3 majority. Then then they moved it down to just a 50% majority for the next round. Next time round, of course, the two giants, rugby and golf, were in the fray. And we missed out again. And the last time, there we were in a front runner, and the executive board dropped wrestling. And wrestling is a huge sport. Even President Putin came back, and so squash has been unlucky. But we'll get there. We'll get there.
When we get there, the irony will be then suddenly we don't have the next Datuk Nicol, for example. So when you look back at all these things, John, you started the fight way back 30, 40 years ago for squash to be there. But now we must get it right so that we have 5 more Datuk Nicol David, even a male Datuk Nicol David going into the fray.
Exactly. And that's we go back to the what we said earlier, is that perhaps we should be looking at squash in a different way. I'd like to see squash. Because I think squash is, although it's an urban sport, I think in big cities like KL, Penang, there's too much distraction. The malls. I like to call Malaysia. You should add another L and call it Mall Asia. Those are the distractions. So let's go to Kuala Pilah. And build a little squash center there. All the little towns should have squash centers because there's not so much distraction, and you have a good coach. The kids will go there. See, it doesn't need to be in every school because the school children will go there.
Center to one
and
school.
on the weekends they can have run really good organized programs, coaching programs, and mini competitions for the youngsters. And of course, again, a pathway for those youngsters. So I reckon the future for squash in this country, when you look at it strategically, is not a big city game. It's going to be your next world champion is going to come from the little towns, if we can get squash courts there.
This is different when you speak to somebody who's been in sports since in school. Okay, a lot of creative ideas. Kolam mendengar Zakbar Kopilah, I'm lobbying for that to happen. But let's go for the last break. But once we are back, I want to get Tunku Tan Sri's view also on, there will be maybe things like Astro Arena if, thought leaders didn't come together and form something. But we need to do more and more, because sports is also an industry nowadays. If it doesn't work as a business, and you have a business acumen also to combine with that. So I want to get your ideas in this. How do we modernize sports in our country, not just on the field or on the track itself, but the supporting services? We might have good athletes, but if we don't have biomechanics, scientists, whatever behind them, and who's going to be their agent, what about their branding, all that after the short break. I'm still very, very glad to be here with Tunku Tan Sri Imran. We have a few minutes left, never enough time with great people, but I had to discuss football one day. I think about a few years ago, there was a big football meet at Shangri-La. And it's not that I met footballers or managers, they were not even there. But this was like the vice president for marketing for Samsung, explaining the blue strategy behind tying up with Chelsea. This was like the academy or youth director of Barcelona FC tell me, no. I don't let my trainees play. They just pass 1, 2, 3, move. 1, 2, 3, move. So then there's the sport physiologists and everything else. So Tunku, I think sports in Malaysia have to move on, but the supporting services, how do you look at that? Because we need it to be commercially viable. We need it also to be very scientifically advanced. How do we move this forward?
Well, first things first. I think sport needs to bring money into it, through sponsorship, through spectators, through rights fees, in order for it to grow. Now, football is a great example.
Yep.
All right. It is loved by everyone. It is watched by everyone. But in a way, it's too centrally controlled. Okay. And, you should let market forces take over. Okay. Like, that's how the English League happened. It's the market forces take over. And if you can really let market forces take over, you can then, each community, around which, the club is based. It could be Seramban, and they can go to Samsung, because it's Seramban, Senawang, and, they can, all these little towns, would then get, their community to, and the businesses around the community to help them. At the moment, that sort of money is not coming into football. And so I think what football needs to do is, less regimentation, more laissez-faire, create the leagues, which is run by the clubs in the leagues, like the Premier League. All the 22 clubs have a say, in what happens, and I think it should be the same. And I think then it'll start to move. And I think there should be strategies for different sports. I mean, every sport is different. Yes. Some sports, like Taekwondo, I was president for a short time of Taekwondo, trying to bring it back, after all the problems. They have 250,000 people doing Taekwondo in this country. Okay. And if each one is registered, each one just pays RM1.
That's 250,000.
Yeah. Say they pay RM1 a month to do, so there are many ways where national sports associations can make money. Yes. I think one is they've got to have a proper strategy. They've got to know their sport and where their money should be coming from. and really then have a really good plan and then execute the plan in order to try and do it. And sport, as you say, can be a big business, and all these supporting services that you say will come naturally, because once the main body and has the money, it is going to understandably need these services, and don't worry. The people will be queuing up to give their services.
The reason I see it like that is because certain sports, you rely on very, very young athletes. And, it's the maybe job of the ecosystem to make sure that, because they can't think for themselves at that time, 12, 13, 14. In certain sports, they peak at 18, 19, 20. So by the time they're maturing as a person, then they'll be ending their career. So there's got to be the ecosystem getting it right. But what I worry more is, if we don't get that right, then who are the role models for our youngsters to look forward? You're one, but we need many, many more, because we have diverse sports, for example, to look at. So if I can make you recount one fondest memories, because I think despite the money, despite the science and technology, it's the color of your jersey or the national flag symbol on your sleeve, and when that song of Negara gets played with the flag being raised for goal, I think that's the moment to go.
That is in any athlete's life and achievement. That's the moment. I never had it, because in those days we didn't. We weren't even in the SEA Games then.
But
or
you
anything.
were there to witness it.
We were there
one fond
many
memory.
times. I witnessed Negara crew go up many times, and it still bring tears into your eyes. And really, you feel for the athlete. They have these tight shots of the athletes, and you just know that the feeling that they are, the relief, the happiness, that they've actually managed to get that gold, and they can see our national flag. It's such a unifying factor.
I agree.
We should use it more.
And we need it more and more. Thank you so much, Tunku Tan Sri. We wish you luck in moving sports for the country forward, even at international level. Of course, that's where we need you the most. And Astro Awani, Agenda Awani will always be with you. You can always come back. We can always raise matters. Thank you so much for making time to be here. Thanks to you for watching. Send in your own views to all the platforms that we have, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or just download our iOS and Android application so you can watch and even give your views there, right there on your favorite gadget. Good night. I'll see you in another episode very, very soon. Goodbye. Thank you so much. One more time.